Welcome to Second Draft's Dialogues with the Media. We're about to look at and analyze an excellent BBC interview by Tim Sebastien with Dr. Mahmoud al-Zahar, a prominent member of the Hamas government in Gaza. Al-Zahar is a demopath. That is, he appeals to us by using human rights language in which he does not believe in order to attack others of violating his human rights, or as another demopath put it, using democracy to destroy democracy. Sebastien does an excellent job of preventing al-Zahar from evading his questions, but at certain key moments, he lets him off the hook. Let's watch.
Depending on where you sit, the Palestinian group Hamas is either an Islamic resistance movement or a bunch of terrorists dedicated to the destruction of Israel.
False dichotomy. Hamas is admittedly an Islamic resistance movement dedicated to the destruction of Israel by any means, including terror.
The Israelis say they won't talk to anyone who doesn't recognize their right to exist. Hamas says it won't even consider recognizing that right until Israel decides on its borders.
What borders? Hamas and al-Zahar are perfectly clear. Not an inch for Israel, from the river to the sea.
Talks, of course, do go on below the surface through intermediaries, but are there any real prospects of success? My guest today is by training a surgeon, and he's a senior official in Hamas. He served briefly as foreign minister in the government that emerged 2 years ago. At the time, he told an interviewer, "Palestine means Palestine in its entirety. We cannot give up a single inch of it. Therefore, we will not recognize the Israeli enemy's right to a single inch."
The viewer can be excused for misunderstanding here, perhaps, and think that he's referring to the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. When he says Palestine in its entirety, he means Palestine in its entirety, including Tel Aviv.
Mahmoud Zahar, welcome to the Doha debates.
Welcome.
According to Israel, in the first 5 months of this year, you had launched 1,950 rockets and mortars, which Human Rights Watch called a serious violation of international humanitarian law. Do you care about that?
Of course we care about that. But we have
So why do you go on doing it then?
But we have to read the page from the beginning. This is the one page. The page means 1/4 of the Palestinian people practice the phenomena of imprisonment. 1/4 of the Palestinian people.
I'm talking about the methods that you use here. We'll get on to some of the background, but I'm asking you about the methods that you use, described as a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
Okay, I'm speaking about imprisonment without reason is also violation of the human right. The second point...
Are you saying that two wrongs make a right, then?
No, we are defending ourselves. We failed to achieve our basal demand, so we resorted...
What kind of defense is this?
We spent 2 intifada, peaceful intifada demonstration. What happened?
2 peaceful intifadas?
They killed in the first intifada 8,000 Palestinian people.
8,000 Palestinians killed by Israelis in the first intifada? A Palestinian human rights study shows 1,100 Palestinians killed by Israelis and 1,000 killed by Palestinians as collaborators, when almost half of them had no association with the Israelis.
100,000 Palestinian people are deeply injured.
We now have the 4 basic themes of the demopathic defense. 1, it's Israel's fault. 2, look at how much we Palestinians have suffered. 3, it's self-defense. And 4, we tried peaceful means, but they didn't work, so we have no choice.
You call this self-defense, indiscriminate attacks against civilian areas in Israel. You don't care who you kill, do you?
No, we care, but we are civilians.
Why do you care? You've never apologized for any civilians that have been hit, have you?
What happened in the other side? Nobody from the Israelis is ready to apologize about taking our land.
I talk to the Israelis about what they do. I'm asking you about things that you do.
I'm here. I can't separate our issue from the Israeli issue.
You can't.
I can't separate the reaction of the Palestinian people from the action of the Israelis.
So you're saying you're not responsible for your actions then?
No, we are responsible about every step, but the other side should justify morally what happened for the Palestinian people. I told you, 8,000 Palestinian people, 100 casualties, deep casualties.
Al-Zahar is playing a game of asymmetrical propaganda here. He inflates civilian casualty figures amongst Palestinians to justify what he calls retaliation. In fact, Hamas fires from civilian areas into Israeli civilian areas in order to provoke a response that will cause as much damage to Palestinian civilians as possible. For al-Zahar, every Palestinian casualty serves his purpose.
Do you think that makes it okay for you to kill indiscriminately and launch 1,950 rockets and mortars against Israel and civilian areas?
It is not like that. By the way, how the Israeli can justify attacking me personally, my family, twice.
But you're not answering my question. Dr. Zahar, you're not answering my question.
I am answering your question.
You're not.
Killing innocent people while they are living in their houses, this is justified, this is moral, this is not a violation. When they killed my son, he was got a master's degree from Salford University, and he spent only 1 week in the university in Gaza as a teacher.
I understand, and I wouldn't for a moment minimize your loss, but you're being accused of exactly the same thing that you're accusing the Israelis of.
As I told
indiscriminate civilian attacks. When in March, when 8 people were killed and 11 injured in an attack on a Jerusalem religious school, your group said, "We bless the operation. It will not be the last."
No, the question was...
You said, we bless the operation.
We are understanding what happened there because in 4 days, when they described this as a Holocaust for Palestinian Holocaust, they killed in 4 days 130. 1/3 of them are children, and the other third are women. They demolished houses. They destroyed everything in our life.
Dr. Zahar, you talk about killing. Thanks in large part to Hamas, last year was the first time since 1967 when more Palestinians were killed by other Palestinians than by Israel.
No, Israel was behind that.
Because they were behind your seizure of Gaza?
Because now Israel is responsible about what is happening in Palestine. Now they are depriving us from the essential demand.
Dr. Zahar, in June last year, during the 8 days of your seizure of Gaza, 161 Palestinians were killed, including 41 civilians.
Why? I will tell you.
What do you mean, why?
Why?
Because of the fighting between you and Fatah, that's why. Because of your fighting.
I think I have to address why. Give me a chance to address why.
Because you wanted to seize power in Gaza, that's clear.
Because we won the election. When we represented the majority, when we got 80 seats out 132, they refused the democracy. They refused to establish a government. They started sanction and imprisonment.
So you went on a killing spree instead?
It is not. They resorted to military action. They took weapons from some Arabic and from the Israeli in order to make an end for the existence of the legal government. So in a case of self-defense, they defeated. So that was the cause.
What al-Zahar refers to as resorting to military action and self-defense, some of us would just call brutal murder. At least you can't accuse Hamas of having a double standard in how they treat Israelis and fellow Palestinians.
Gaza's preventative security headquarters has fallen to Islamist Hamas gunmen on the 6th day of the territory's bloody power struggle. It's one of the last bastions of Fatah forces loyal to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Its capture by Hamas is a powerful symbol to Gaza's residents of the Islamists' tightening grip. Some onlookers appeared to join the celebrations as they watched events unfold. Meanwhile, the casualties of the bitter street fighting continue to rise. Dozens have been killed and many others wounded in almost a week of gun battles. Most of the casualties are gunmen involved in the fighting, but some civilians, children among them, are also paying a heavy price.
Here, Hamas trains its Fatah captives in jumping with virtual parachutes.
Who's the enemy? Who's the enemy when after your actions 161 Palestinians are dead, 41 civilians?
Good question. Apparently, 2 floors wasn't enough. Let's try 10 floors.
All of them
in the fighting.
All of them from the other side.
You share no guilt in this?
Of course, we are ashamed, all the Palestinian people, but we have to understand the cause was Fatah decided to make an end by military activities against Hamas. For this reason, in a case of self-defense, we resorted to...
Self-defense. According to Human Rights Watch, you engaged, along with Fatah, you engaged in torturing, summarily executing captured and incapacitated fighters, including inside hospitals.
No, this is not correct.
Not correct? Here's Hamas taking care of their Fatah captives again.
This is not correct.
So they're all wrong, are they?
Why you are forgetting that 16 foreigners, including Alan Johnston, was kidnapped during the previous era, and we succeeded to set them free? Why you are not speaking about making a very important end for using guns?
Nobody said that it wasn't important, but I'm talking about going into hospitals and summarily executing injured prisoners.
That was not from Hamas.
You never did that.
That was not from Hamas. That was from the other side.
You say categorically. Well, you're accused. Both sides are accused of doing
Okay,
this.
If they are accusing both sides...
They're accusing both sides. You're happy about that, then?
No, I'm not happy. No, we are not happy.
You are telling me categorically that you have not engaged in human rights abuses?
No. Who will be happy to abuse human rights?
Nobody is happy to abuse human rights? Then this must be Palestinians mourning in the streets at the announcement of the murder of 8 teenagers in a Jerusalem seminary.
People are looking at the kind of methods that you employ and wondering, is this the kind of state that you want to build in the Palestinian territories, a state based on torture, summary executions, kidnappings?
Of course not, because we resorted to the election, and what the problem started in America and Israel.
You've also resorted to these things according to very good documentation from an independent human rights organization.
They gave us no chance in order to implement. They did very strict
So you're
sanctions.
admitting that you did these things?
No, nobody is happy, but we are enforced to defend the legitimacy of the Palestinian people, the will of the Palestinian people represented by the last election. The Palestinian people started negotiation with the Israeli in Madrid conference, 1992. What happened? They spent more 2 decades wasting our time. They are confiscating our land, expansion of the settlement on the expense of our holy places.
I'm talking about the situation now.
The situation
now
we started
is that the Arab governments are losing patience with
I am
you,
not
aren't
accepting to read the last page in the book. We started negotiation with the Israeli, Abu Ammar and Abu Mazen, continued their meeting with Olmert and the previous administration, and they brought for us big zero. What happened by the negotiation? We resorted to the military activities as a resistance, as any country, as Mr. de Gaulle resorted to military activities against Nazism occupation.
Military activities? That's a sterile description of Hamas's methods. As far as I know, de Gaulle never blew up any restaurants filled with women and children. Maybe it was out of a peculiar French respect for food, but also maybe out of a respect for human life.
As everybody in Algeria and Egypt, in order to make an end for the occupation.
And in the process, you're moving ever closer to Iran. The State Department last month said that Iran has provided you with extensive funding, training, and weapons. Is that true?
Again, Sebastien has let him off the hook. Hamas resorted to terror from the beginning of the Oslo process. In fact, Hamas exulted in the middle of the negotiations that only under the shadow of negotiations had martyrdom operations reached such a great number. And comparing himself to de Gaulle, who spent the war in London making radio broadcasts and when he became president started killing Algerians with gusto?
Let me come to the point of the question, which is, if you are engaged in this arms build-up, how seriously can we take the discussions about a truce that you are holding with Egypt as an intermediary at the moment?
The issue here is not the truce. The truce in Arabic is a hudna, which is a ceasefire during which they have every intention of rearming. The real issue is, how seriously can we take Hamas's desire for peace?
Anybody has a magic solution to minimize our suffering and to stop the Israeli incursion and to make an end for the Israeli invasion, destruction of our people, killing killing everybody by
Are you ready
drugs.
for a truce?
This would have been a good time for Sebastien to come back to the original question about why Hamas is bombing Israeli civilians. Stopping those attacks is a pretty sure way of getting Israelis not to invade Gaza.
You're telling me that the truce negotiations are not going to go anywhere?
Because from us,
yes,
it's from the Israeli side.
No, but from your point of view, tell me, are you going to get a truce or not? Are you serious about getting a truce?
Speaking about truce here is a classic example of miscommunication between a Westerner and a Palestinian demopath. For al-Zahar, truce is hudna, and it means preparation for further war. For Sebastien, truce is supposed to lead to peace. The question is misframed.
Are you ever going to recognize the right of Israel to exist?
Israel is ready to recognize the right of the Palestinian people to exist. This should be answered. What type of Israel we have to recognize? What is the border of Israel? That occupy Golan Heights? What is the constitution of Israel that defines the state? Give me the reason for the people who recognize Israel to exist.
Is it possible that you, Hamas, will recognize the right of Israel to exist in the future?
We have multiple questions. Should be answered first by the Israeli, and after that I'm going to answer this question.
So you can't give me an answer?
Because we have no answer from the Israeli side.
All right. No, and you're not giving me an answer either.
I have no problem. I have no problems with you. My problem with Israel.
All right.
All right? Hamas is on record, not 1 inch of land to Israel. They're not waiting for an Israeli answer. The Israelis could give them all the way back to the 67 borders, even to the 47 borders, and they wouldn't accept it. Why does Sebastien let them off the hook?
I'm going to take a question from the gentleman in the third row there.
Point blank, what will it take for peace with Israel? What exactly are you looking for? If they go back to the 67 border, will that be it? I'm confused. What will it take for peace?
These are imaginary questions.
Imaginary question? Only for somebody whose definition of peace is the elimination of his neighbor.
And because Israel is addressing, and America blessed that we should respect the present situation. The present situation means confiscation of all the land around Jerusalem. I will give you one example. What is called Ma'ale Adumim settlement, its length is about 50 kilometers. Israel is ready to withdraw from this area, which is part of the area occupied 67. If they are ready to withdraw and to leave the settlement for the Palestinian people, I think the Palestinian people will think, and will think thoroughly about reaching with them some sort of either long-term hodma or peace process.
This is a particularly important point for anyone who thinks that withdrawal to the 67 borders will bring peace. Al-Zahar has essentially told us that after the Israelis withdraw to the 67 borders, then the Palestinian people might think about the possibility of a long-term hudna or a peace process.
But in case of expansion of the settlement, confiscation of our right in the land and in the holy place, this imaginary question should not be answered, because it will be on the expense of the Palestinian national interest.
The viewer at this point needs to understand what Al-Zahar means by the Palestinian national interest. One of the characteristics of Palestinian demopaths is that they'll say one thing in English and a completely different thing in Arabic. So we've been listening to Al-Zahar in English, now let's listen to him in Arabic define the Palestinian national interest.
فنحن لا نعترف للعدو الإسرائيلي لا بالحق الجوار ولا بالإقامة ولا بامتلاك شبر واحد.
All of a sudden, the imaginary question isn't so imaginary anymore. And in fact, in Arabic, Al-Zahar has no problem being clear.
ثوابتنا واضحة أن فلسطين وقف إسلامي لا يجوز التنازل عنه.
It wasn't an imaginary question, it was a question about what it would take to get peace, and you just answered some of it. Is that your main condition? The withdrawal from the settlements and return to the pre-67 borders.
It is not a main condition.
In other words, the answer to the imaginary question is no. Withdrawal to the 67 borders will not bring peace.
Now ask the Israeli, very imaginary question.
No, but we're asking you.
What does it take from your point of view? I am asking in public, the Israeli, are they ready to leave every inch occupied at 67?
Dr. Al-Zahar, how can anybody negotiate with you if you won't say what you want?
That question should be answered by the Israeli, because
no, but we're asking you. There are two sides to a negotiation, aren't there?
They are asking us preconditions and denouncing our right before any sort of discussion.
Remember what Al-Zahar means by our right.
ثوابتنا واضحة أن فلسطين وقف إسلامي لا يجوز التنازل عنه.
I'm going to take a question from the gentleman up there, please, in the striped shirt.
Today, Hamas is considered as a terrorist act by 22 countries. So do you still think that Hamas is eligible enough to run the Palestinian government, and why?
First of all, we have to define what is the terrorist and not terrorist, and what is the difference between terrorism and the freedom fighter. And if we are terrorists, why America in the beginning asked everybody in order to participate in the Palestinian election? If we are terrorists, why the American people, like Mr. Carter, is sitting down with us, discussing with us? And if we are terrorists, what is the definition of Mr. de Gaulle, who ran effective armed struggle against the occupation? Give me a concrete definition of the terrorism.
This is a classic demopathic argument that relies on the moral foolishness of people like Jimmy Carter and the pretended even-handedness of the media, who won't even use the word terrorism to describe terroristic activity. The Boston Globe, for example, writes, "To label any group in the Middle East as terrorist is to take sides, or at least appear to, and that is not acceptable." But you can't deal with the problem if you can't identify it. And Al-Zahar's purpose here is precisely to prevent us from defining terrorism. What is terrorism? How about blowing up a pizza parlor, targeting women and children? Hamas not only takes credit for these acts, but celebrates them by producing an exhibit recreating the moment of the explosion for the enjoyment of the Palestinian people. Hamas targets civilians all the time.
So, Dr. Zahar, you're right and everybody else is wrong. It's becoming a long list of people who are wrong.
No, it is not.
Abu Mazen is wrong, Fatah is wrong, Israel is wrong, everybody is wrong, America is wrong.
Yes.
You're the only ones who have the key to the great knowledge of life.
No. Yes, they were wrong, because they believed that with the Israeli negotiation on this style, expansion of the settlement, will bring for them the basal demand. They spent since Oslo up to this moment many years, and they achieved big zero.
Gentleman in the first row, please.
Dr. Zahar, I read a report that the Palestinian television company, I don't know what it's called, but in the kids' shows, they're actually encouraging kids to have one cause in their life, and that is to demolish Israel.
Who is this guy? An Islamophobe? Actually, he's probably referring to something like this.
انت ليش اسمك اسود وانت شكلك ارنوب؟ لانه يا هذا الارنوب دايما انسان ايش؟ مش كويس، صح ولا لا؟ وانسان جبان، لكن انا اسود ان شاء الله اللي حخوف اليهود واقول لهم اكل ان شاء الله رب العالمين.
I will tell you what is happening in the schools of Israel. They are speaking about their land. We're
asking about the schools in the Palestinian territories.
Give me a chance.
And you always push the question onto what is going on in Israel. We're asking you about the Palestinian television.
You can suppose for me.
Can you give a direct answer to a direct question?
How about something like this?
حكيت عن الشهادة كشيء جميل، أنت بتعتقد إنه شيء جميل؟
الشهادة كتير شيء جميل جدا. كل الناس بتتمنى الشهادة.
أيوه.
لأنه يعني إيش في أحلى من إنك تروحي على الجنة.
For those who don't know, shahada means blowing yourself up amongst Israeli civilians.
I am answering the question very clearly.
In a very roundabout way, Dr. Zahar. In a very roundabout way.
Okay,
Please stick to the question.
That's my style.
I know it's your style. I know it's your style. Please answer the question.
This is funny?
نشيد القدس اسلمي يا قدس انني فدا انني ارجو مع اليوم غدا ومعي قلبي وعزمي للجهاد.
There is incitement inside Israel reached to the level that we are snakes Rabbi Yusuf, Avadi Yusuf, he is a part in the government. He described Muslims are snakes and the scorpion.
He didn't describe Muslims but Arabs, and he almost got prosecuted for it, not put on TV, like this preacher.
يقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فيختبئ اليهود خلف الحجر والشجر فيقول الحجر والشجر